And we're back for more scary stories to tell in the dark. And this is Mr. Bones. He has no hands. He can't wave. But if he did, he would. Hi. Today, we're going to be reading, with the permission from Scholastic, some more scary stories. This is from volume 3. And this is another one of my favorites. This is called Harold. Harold. I once had an uncle named Harold. Sadly, he fell into a wood chipper, and he became mulch. But we had some great pumpkins that year. Thanks, Harold. Thanks, Uncle. My finger is coming off. Let me fix that here. Okay, so let's read Harold. Not my Uncle Harold that fell into the wood chipper. They just share the same name. This is a different Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. Well, you're hanging around cows all day, it doesn't sound too much fun. All day the two men tended to their cows. At night, they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. Let's make a doll the size of a man, he said. It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden and scare away the birds. Oh, sorry, buddy. Didn't mean to do that. It should look like Harold, Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose, just like Harold's, and tiny eyes like his. That's not very nice. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Harold. Each morning, on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night, they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. Don't want to do that to Harold. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe it was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, very slowly. They would both laugh, but not Harold. I wouldn't be laughing either. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick him or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it or else." Then the men would howl with laughter. "Sounds like a waste of good stew to me." Don't ever want to waste stew. He would eat some stew if he could, but he's just a head. He's got no esophagus or a stomach. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible. Kind of like you. You can't grunt because you don't have vocal cords. You don't really have a tongue either. You're just a skull. You're my buddy, though. I'll never let anyone tell you differently." fire, said Thomas, and that will be that. Let's not do anything stupid, said Alfred. We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. But now, let's just keep an eye on him. So they left Harold sitting in a corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him. They didn't take him outside anymore. Now and then the dog grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of, other than the fact that it was grunting. Whatever. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. I don't really think that's how it works, but it's not my story. I didn't write it. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. Harold is growling, he said. I was thinking the same thing, Thomas said. Maybe it's just our imagination, Alfred replied. We have been up here on this mountain too long. The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. You can't blame them, can you? They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Uh-oh. Neither one of them wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. You can't milk your cow without a milking stool. Everyone knows that. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? I don't know, you ever see Chucky? That's another story, though. They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. I'll catch up with you, he said, and Alfred walked on toward the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. You shouldn't mess with Harold. You shouldn't have done that. Or you should have made the thing first. And then you shouldn't have played around with Harold. Harold didn't like that. That was good, wasn't it, buddy? Okay, well, we'll see you next week for some more scary stories to tell in the dark. Okay, bye. See you later. Yeah.